560, The Answer.
Get the latest weather, traffic, and news updates online at 560theanswer.com. Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. Only the biggest stories, only the biggest guests, and only the biggest opinions. This is AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. Tony Preckwinkle, the president of the Cook County Board. She's got a primary challenge, Brendan Riley, next year. I mean, 6 of one, half dozen the other. Sanctuary City versus Sanctuary County versus Sanctuary State. That's all part of the same groupthink. Preckwinkle got together some Cook County commissioners to decry Operation Midway Blitz. Of course she did. Just like BLM Brandon, just like Jelly Belly Pritzker, they all have to sing from the same hymnal. Otherwise, how would they defend the catastrophes, the deaths that have resulted from their policies? I mean, Operation Midway Blitz is named in honor of Katie Abraham, who was killed in Urbana, along with a friend of hers, by a man in this country illegally, as we've talked about quite a bit, including talking to her father, Joe. So they have to get out there and say things like this.
These practices create fear in our neighborhoods and erode trust in law enforcement. Plainclothes agents, unmarked cars, and the refusal to provide identification are not hallmarks of transparency or accountability. Instead, they raise the risk of abuse, intimidation, and impersonation. This is unacceptable.
For reaction to what Tony Preckwinkle had to say and what politicians in Chicago and Illinois have been saying since we decided to enforce the border and immigration law under this president, please be joined by Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor for DHS and CBP, Office of the Commissioner, former Chief of U.S. Border Patrol and Deputy Commissioner and retired Acting Director at ICE. Ron Vitiello, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Dan, I'm delighted to be out with you.
So, it's that you've been this demonization. That's a room temperature version of it, but it's the same old talking point. It's unmarked cars, plainclothes officers, wearing masks, intimidating people, as our governor has said here in Illinois. Their interest is cruelty and terror. And that's basically what you're getting from Tony Preckwinkle and a bunch of Cook County politicians yesterday.
Yeah, I would categorize that as propaganda. And if the leadership of Illinois, Cook County, the city itself, if they wanted to change conditions as it relates to Operation Midway Blitz or, improve the quality of life of the people in Chicagoland, they would just merely work with ICE and work with the federal government to allow ICE officers and immigration officers to arrest people who are in the country illegally, who have been arrested by local jurisdictions, and take those people into custody. Once their cases in the local courts are adjudicated, they can be put on a path for removal. They can be turned over inside of the lobby of a jail. That is the safest way to take criminal aliens into custody and improve the quality of life of the people of Chicagoland. But the leadership in Illinois can't see themselves to do that, and so they engage in a destructive policy that allows people who are in the country illegally to do all sorts of terrible things in which they will be arrested by local jurisdictions and then be let back out on the street to reoffend, to re-victimize, and to engage in recidivism for criminal acts across the area. And so, they can complain all they want. The law is the way it is, and it has been for many years. And so people who are in the country illegally don't deserve to be here. We didn't invite them here. They weren't inspected and vetted by immigration officers to be allowed to stay and visit. And so what we're seeing in Midway Blitz is a commitment by the president, leadership by Secretary Noem, to say, hey, there's a lot of criminals in jurisdictions like this, and we're going to go find them, and we're going to put them on a path for removal.
Now, to be fair here, there was an operation in suburban Elgin, apparently, and 5 people were taken into custody. 2 of them turned out to be U.S. citizens, and they were subsequently released. So nobody's being disappeared, and nobody's being denied their due process, and so on and so forth. And ICE officers, are going to make mistakes. You just hope that they're not serious mistakes and they can be corrected. Seems like that the mistake they made with those 2 U.S. citizens was. But you described, why this is more complicated than it needs to be, because we can't handle these things with federal and state and local working together. That's an important point. But how does ICE make a mistake like that, where, because just for people's understanding, where they bring in 2 individuals they apparently thought were here illegally that turned out to be U.S. citizens? How can those sorts of mistakes be avoided?
Well, as I understand it, that was a criminal warrant service, and it is very common in law enforcement when officers serve a warrant and they make dynamic entry, right? When they break down the door to serve that warrant and arrest the individual targets that are inside, each of the people that are in that residence are ordered and asked and secured by the police until the target is found and extracted or taken into custody. And those 2 people of the 5, which presumably means that 3 of the people that were there were in the country illegally or were named on those arrest warrants. And so when someone is briefly taken into custody to verify their identity, to make sure that they're not the person on the warrant, police will normally take that person into custody, sometimes put them and detain them into handcuffs or in the back of a patrol car until the investigation is complete. I think that's what happened here, and people want to make more of it. But the criminal targets inside that home in Elgin could have been turned over by the Cook County Sheriff's Office in the lobby in a secure area of a jail in which everybody is identified, and there is a law enforcement relationship that exists, and everybody verifies who everybody else is, and those people are taken into custody without incident. And that happens in many jurisdictions across the country every single day in the quest to protect Americans and improve their quality of life by removing criminals who do not have status in the U.S.
Yeah, or Kane County, some suburban collar counties, but it's the same thing because, of course, Illinois is a sanctuary state. And I wanted to get your reaction to something. So the city of Wheaton, Illinois, which is the county seat of DuPage County, the 2nd most populous county in Illinois, and where I'm from, by the way, Wheaton College, I'm sure you're familiar with, Billy Graham and all that, used to be a conservative area. We used to be able to say that about a lot of places in Illinois. But this is the missive from Wheaton. It's a 45,000 person suburban community. Yeah, pretty safe and all that. And I just want to get your reaction, like in terms of the advice and counsel you would provide to local officials and police having to operate in a state like Illinois. They posted, "We understand that federal inactivity we have received numerous inquiries about federal immigration operations within the city and the level of communication and cooperation between federal and local authorities. We understand that federal activity in our area can cause uncertainty and raise concerns in our community, and we want the Wheaton community to understand the state laws. The Wheaton Police Department adheres to all Illinois laws put in place by the Trust Act, which prohibits our police officers from participating, supporting, or assisting in any capacity in federal immigration operations. For more information, there's a link." The whole sort of tone of this I found disquieting. I mean, the whole federal activity in our area could cause uncertainty. I mean, would it be nice for you guys, for ICE, if you had local officials in a place like Wheaton say, so here's the deal. We've got the Trust Act, which is oxymoronic with an emphasis on moronic, and it prohibits our local police from helping federal law enforcement. So federal law enforcement is here to enforce federal laws and to make our communities safer and to remove people that shouldn't be here. And but unfortunately, our hands are tied, and we'll do everything that we can under Illinois law to support federal law enforcement. But just understand that the choices that we've made in terms of the leadership of this state have put us in this place. Yeah, something like that. That's a little bit more strip the veneer away and tell people what time it really is.
Yeah, the euphemism like the Trust Act, right? This is a destructive policy. You wouldn't say the same thing about people who are wanted in the community for kidnapping children or being pedophiles or robbing banks or whatever. You name the federal crime that is enforced all over the country, including in Illinois and in Wheaton, where I have family that I care deeply about.
Oh.
This is a euphemism for them not wanting to comply with federal law. And again, they wouldn't do it for other offenses under the federal code. The left and the propagandists on the left and this weak, feckless leadership has tried to convince Americans and people that live in Chicagoland that being in the country illegally is not a crime. Well, guess what? It is a federal crime to cross the border illegally and come into the country uninvited. It is also very destructive, like we saw in the last 4 years under the Biden administration, where upwards of 12 million people on the government rolls came into the country illegally. The Secretary Mayorkas himself said that 85% of those people were released into our communities, degrading borders, degrading the sovereignty of the United States, and impinging on the lives and livelihood and the quality of life in places like Chicagoland. So this leadership chooses to choose the people that are not from here and embolden them and act like the law doesn't apply federally in Wheaton, but it sure does.
Well, right. I mean, it's this idea we sort of fall into this trap of passively aggressively participating in the demonization of ICE. Like ICE is the problem. We can't do anything about this federal law enforcement that's in town enforcing the law as like, it's a bad thing. We understand it raises concern and uncertainty. What raises concern and uncertainty is, 80,000 unaccompanied minors that disappeared into this country under the Biden administration, almost 23,000 that have been located by the Trump administration, and 400 people have been arrested. 27 of the minors were found dead, either by murder, suicide, or drug overdose, according to HHS. I mean, the impacts of the policies that are championed in places like Illinois, I mean, that seems to me like where we should be driving the conversation relentlessly.
That's absolutely right. The crimes that are committed by people who are in the country illegally are completely preventable. We will all be safer. Quality of life will go up. Children won't be exploited. People in the labor context won't be exploited for their hard work. If you control the border and you have an immigration system that has integrity, many of your listeners, many of my family, yours maybe as well, have an immigration story in our background. Our grandparents and their parents came from other places around the world to come to this country. If we give up our sovereignty to people, anybody that has enough energy to walk across the southwest border or fly into the country and overstay their visa, if we give that up across the board, then we're not going to have the country that we want to live in. We're not going to have conditions and quality of life that our kids and our grandkids deserve.
And by the way, I mean, again, these cases are being adjudicated. A high-profile one, there's been a development there. An immigration judge in Louisiana has issued an order that a former Columbia University student, Mahmoud Khalil, be deported to Algeria or Syria. So he's been winding his way through the courts. He has 30 days to appeal that decision to the Board of Immigration Appeals. So he is. So the other thing that's happening, ICE isn't some Pinochet death squad where it's pulling people off the street, even if they have a detainer, and then just, they're just gone and nobody ever hears from them again, and then they're not funneled into a court system where they get due process rights. All of this is being done under the color of law, and all of these ghost stories are just that.
No, that's absolutely right. And these irresponsible politicians that call federal law enforcement doing their jobs, when they call that disappearing or kidnapping, it's the height of irresponsibility and hypocrisy. They claim that they want people to they want agents to take their masks off, but they don't try to pass laws to keep agents and their families from being doxxed online and being harassed online when the people out there put their names and their identities and their addresses online. And Khalil, seems to favor the policies of Hamas. And so, I'm sure he'll be welcomed back to the Middle East where he can advocate for terrorist organizations around the globe. He does not have to do that here. He has no privilege to stay in the United States under those conditions. He could have been here. He could have been a productive scholar or professor in the Ivy League or wherever he was. But if he wants to espouse, the goodness of Hamas around the world, he can certainly do it from overseas.
I wanted to play something else Marco Rubio said this week about visa revocations, sort of along the lines of those advocating for terrorist organizations, those cheerleading the political assassinations.
We are not in the business of inviting people to visit our country who are going to be involved in negative and destructive behavior. Okay, so why should, if I invite someone, if we invite someone to visit the United States of America as a student, as a tourist, as whatever, then they have the standard they should be held to is very high. We shouldn't be bringing people into this country. We should not be giving visas to people who are going to come to the United States and do things like celebrate the murder, the execution, the assassination of a political figure. We should not. And if they're already here, we should be revoking their visa.
What do you think about that? I mean, I don't know how much engagement, say, ICE has or CBP has from a policymaking perspective with the Secretary of State or Homeland Security, but your reaction, either sort of professionally or just as an American.
Well, I think he's absolutely right, and I can tell you that the interagency cooperation between ICE and CBP and the State Department, Department of Defense, and Justice is better than I've ever seen it. I've got 40 years of experience in and around these issues, and it is wonderful. And to hear the Secretary of State say, look, immigration, whether it's a visa, whether it's someone who's coming to immigrate legally to the United States, when somebody's going to matriculate to become a United States citizen through the process, those laws are on the books to preserve the American way of life and to improve the American experience. It is not supposed to be for people who want to come and tear down the country, who want to tear down other individuals. This political assassination hasn't happened for decades in America, and that's bad enough. But now we're seeing online these people who are going joyfully out there and saying that they're glad to see what had happened. Somebody who was killed for their beliefs and their verbalization of the American way of life. It's terrible to see. And when we're inviting people to the United States on a visa or to come to immigrate, that's supposed to be for the benefit of America, not for that individual, not from the country that they come from, but for us as citizens that live here.
Ron Vitiello, Senior Advisor for DHS and CBP Office of the Commissioner, former Chief of U.S. Border Patrol and Deputy Commissioner and retired Acting Director at ICE as well. Ron Vitiello, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Dan.
And Ron joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is the morning show more Chicago radio listeners are choosing. This is Chicago's Morning Answer on AM 560. The Answer.
Terracon Consultants Incorporated seeks senior staff engineer in Lombard, Illinois to analyze data and perform engineering calculations and analysis. $102,669 to $127,700 per year. Standard benefits. Apply at jobpostingtoday.com. Reference number 930.